Kia ora everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Muse. And this episode is actually going to be a little bit different because today we have the amazing, if you don't mind me saying, Mr. Kev Rowland. Kev, how are you going, man?
Yeah, good, thanks, Ben. Good to see you again.
Likewise, it's been a little while. Kev is actually, the reason I brought him on the show is because I believe Kev has a lot of experience in listening to music, and his reviews of bands, both New Zealand and international, are incredible. The amount of depth and detail he has in describing what he's hearing, I just am in awe of. I also write for music.net.nz. Kev actually writes for a lot of different websites and magazines. So I figured, man, let's get this guy on because for you as a student, I think it's really important to get different perspectives on how people listen, what they're listening for, and learning how to do that and then going away and practicing that. So Kev, if you don't mind, we typically start the episode with asking you a little bit about your musical background.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to you.
I first got into music really big time in the early 70s because obviously I'm really old. And when I went to grammar school, I met with this guy. We became friends. And his brother was about 3 or 4 years older than him. So when I went round to my mate's house, we went to the record collection. And we picked 2 albums out at random. We didn't know any of the names, so we just went for the artwork. And the first 2 albums we ever played were Black Sabbath's Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and Ted Nugent's Free for All.
Cool.
And I'd never heard guitar like it, and I was immediately entranced. And we literally worked through that record collection, and it was Deep Purple, it was Pretty Things, it was Pink Fairies, Atomic Rooster, all classic hard rock and progressive bands from the early 70s. And that's really where I first started to get really interested in music. And at school, in the music room, there was a record player, which the lower 6th we were allowed to use. So that's year 12.
Okay.
And I was lower down the school, but I would go to the music room when I knew they were going to be in there because I wanted to understand what they were playing, what they were listening to. And that's how I discovered bands like Jethro Tull and Hawkwind. And I was just immediately intrigued by the different styles and structures of music and how different it was to what was going on popular radio. And I immediately became interested mostly in progressive and what we called back then hard rock. We didn't really call it metal.
Yeah.
But that's what I really got into. And then that all the way through the 80s, I kept doing that. I built up a very large music collection of my own. And I was intrigued not only in the music, but the musicians behind it and what they were doing and where they were staying in bands and their influences. And I would go back into the 60s and 50s and even 40s, looking at previous influences. And then in the early 90s, I was made aware of what we call the progressive underground. These were independent bands all around the world playing progressive rock, what we would call progressive rock music. But they weren't being promoted by the media at all. So it was very much underground and independent. And I decided I wanted to be part of promoting that. So I started writing. I actually started writing in 1988, just for some little magazines. And then in 1990, I started to pick up on the progressive scene. And I ran a magazine in the UK myself for 16 years. We produced 11,000 pages of print, more than 80 issues. Wow. I wrote thousands of reviews. I wasn't the only writer, but I wrote thousands. And then I came to New Zealand 15 years ago. Still tried to stop writing. Unfortunately, I'm a music addict. And unfortunately for me, even though I told labels, bands, PR companies not to send me material, it kept coming or some kept coming. And then I would be asked to write. So from there, I just kept writing, picking it up. And I collated all my progressive reviews of those 15 years back into 3 books, which are available now. I'm now working on book 4. And at the same time now I've started working for music.net because there's so much great music in the local scene.
There is.
And I've been spending all these years writing about the international scene that I felt it was time to actually do everything in our own backyard. So tonight I'm off to see Primacy. Next week I'm off to see The Mighty Written by Wolves and the Fantastic Caridian again. Obviously I've seen your band channeled about 4 or 5 times. I'm in love with Cafe Fistfight, White Noise Mafia, Outside In. There is so much great music out there. So I'm doing my best to promote it.
Yeah. And amazing. And you know what? I'm just going to go back and just recap a couple of things. You know, that's actually how I got into music. My dad's record collection, because I'm British essentially, even though I grew up in New Zealand. My dad's record collection was humongous and varied, mainly rock, progressive rock. I used to just go through and find records, stick the headphones on, and just pay attention, man. It was just like, I remember listening to Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd for the first time, like all the way through, and just being entranced. And then as I got older, I started listening to the other albums from Pink Floyd. But then there's all these other artists that I'd never heard. Hawkwind, man, I know Hawkwind. I'd seen them live. So great story, something that I share, and I think many music lovers, they have a similar story, be it records, be it Spotify, nowadays, whatever it is. And yes, the local scene, we're going to get outside in here soon. I'm actually we already have White Noise Mafia lined up because they're young and they're incredible. And we were humbled to have I'm going to say yes, humbled to have lost to them in the Battle of the Bands final because they were that good. So I'm looking forward to speaking to them about that stuff. So yeah, man, look, I think the next part I really want to talk to you about is now that you've introduced yourself, if you could tell us and tell our students kind of like how you listen to music, because to me, listening is an art. Everyone kind of always wants to wait for their turn to speak. And because music doesn't have that back and forward conversation, it requires you to have attention given to it. And then the reward, I guess, is something that you might talk about. So just tell us what you're doing when you're listening, and yeah, I guess that's it. Just you can talk how you like about this. I think this is great.
Yeah, I think again, I need to go back in time, and the reason I say that is when I was growing up and I was listening to music was something you did. You put on an album and you looked at the artwork and you read the lyrics, and that's what you did. And there was an entity in itself. You didn't listen to music whilst you were reading, unless you just had it on as background, but you weren't listening, but you actually listened to music. And that's because we had 3 TV channels. They weren't on during the day. They went off at night. There was no internet. There's no mobile phones. There's no social media. There's anything like that. So you actually listen to music. So consequently, I still do. I listen to music as in itself, and I listen to it and what it's doing. Now, for me, the importance that I'm looking for when I'm listening to music, first off, is can people play and can people sing? That, I know it sounds daft, but that to me is the first thing. That's the actual basic. Is there a level of musicianship? And is it at the right level for the style of music that's being played? And what I mean by that is someone who's in a hardcore punk band is not going to be doing technically the same things as someone in a progressive rock band or in a mathcore band. However, that's because they don't need to for the genre. So it's all about the genre. And the second thing is, how real is it? And for me, if you said to me, what's the absolute perfect style of music? I will say a single singer with an acoustic guitar. And what I mean by that, there is no room to hide. Mm-hmm. There is no studio trickery. It's just one person and their guitar.
I was going to just jump in here because that's an interesting point. And one of the things that I kind of learnt from university when I studied songwriting, we had that discussion about if you can sing and play the song on an acoustic guitar, then is that a good song? And it was always kind of a resounding yes. And of course, there's some styles where that's not applicable.
Yep.
But at the core, that's a very good point you make there.
Yeah, and I have a couple of pet hates, and I can't help it. Okay. One is drum machines. I think they're the worst invention ever made to God or man. I've been ranting about them for more than 40 years because to me, a drum machine just replaces a sweaty individual, and there's nothing quite like a sweaty individual. And the other thing is auto-tune. I want a singer who can sing. And for me, music lives and dies in the live environment. So for me, it's interesting because it's unusual for a live band, a great live band, to really capture it in the studio. And it does work sometimes, but generally the studio albums are a little bit of a disappointment. And it's no surprise that a lot of the top albums, which people talk about, are albums like Who, Live at Leeds, UFO, Strangers in the Night, Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous, Nazareth, Snaz, and it goes on. And they're live albums where you really capture that energy. So for me, I'm listening to what does it sound like? What's the production like? What's the engineering like? And I'm actually listening for the technical aspects you like before I'm even listening to the hooks And then I want to know, is this repetitive? Is it doing something? Is it interesting me? Lyrically, are we actually getting a story? Are we getting something of interest? Is it boy meets girl, girl runs away, and all that sort of thing? And that sort of thing just turns me off. Or people only really write one or two verses and then they repeat them. Is it a standard verse, chorus structure, or is there something more interesting going on? Is there a bridge? Are we getting changes in time signature? Now, that to me, that fascinates me. When people either change the time signature or they'll move the key during a song. That to me automatically shows a certain amount of technical ability, understanding of structure, and that sort of thing. And this is all really before I'm even coming to the melody and how all that bit's coming together. So I try and listen to everything. I have a very wide taste in music, very Catholic taste. I listen to virtually anything that's rock-based, folk-based, blues-based, jazz-based. That doesn't cover everything. I don't get or understand rap. I don't get or understand hip-hop. I don't get or understand electro. And things like that. But that's fine. If everybody liked the same thing, we'd all be listening to Taylor Swift all the time, or Justin Bieber. I mean, my wife made me play the radio in the car the other day, and he came on, and I'm going, what is this? Why is this man sold multi-million dollars worth of albums?
This is where I come in, I play devil's advocate, right? So a couple of things I want to go back to. One is, like, from a style and genre standpoint, like drum machines and auto-tune are things that are part of, like, let's call it like trap music or you know, trap pop music if you're talking about specific artists. And I guess, like, you know, what you're saying is that's nothing wrong with that. I guess it's your personal taste, and that's a really important thing for students and music listeners to understand, is that there's no discrimination of those things. It's just that for me personally, I don't understand it. When I was at university, we you know, I never really got into Taylor Swift, and I never really got into that sort of stuff. But as we started to, you know, Godfrey de Groot, who was one of my mentors at university, he started to challenge us a little bit and start to look at that particular style of songwriting. There are some clever techniques there, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you know, that you don't like it. It just, you know what I'm getting at. Eh? It's like, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not your taste. No, and that's totally fine.
It's just not my taste. So what I try and do is, as a reviewer, first off, I try to only review things that are within the genres that I appreciate. If I get sent an album that I really don't like, there's a British band called Babel, and they're a progressive band, very much in the area of Talking Heads. And I just never got into Talking Heads. I can't help it. I know David Byrne's very clever, and there's the odd song that I like, but I really don't get Talking Heads. That's me. There's millions of people around the world who tell you very differently. So when I reviewed the album, I realized it was very Talking Heads in style. I actually wrote the review in a way that basically was me appreciating what they're doing without enjoying it. The record label contacted me saying they'd never seen such a positive negative review in all their life. They were absolutely blown away, as were the band, because I'd spent the time to really listen and understand what they were doing, at the same time recognizing it's not something I was interested in.
Nice. And I think that's a really important point that, you know, I try to teach my students, is to be objective about what it is they don't like about it. You can't say, you know, because our year 10s, it's great that you mentioned a few times here style and genre. Our year 10s at Woker College, they actually have to, you know, choose a band, then they have to present a presentation about this genre that they're part of. And a lot of the time they don't know what those specific things are. And so if they're doing something with another person and it's not a style that they like, then they have to be able to be subjective and objective, and instead of just saying, you know, I don't like it, it's like, I don't like it because of these reasons. And that's totally fine. So it's cool to hear that someone reacted positively to something that you did where you don't necessarily enjoy it, but you know, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and the thing is, we always try, as writers, we're always trying to be fully objective. However, it will always be subjective.
Yeah.
Music is incredibly emotional. If we hear a song, that we'll tie it back to when we heard something similar to that before, be it a good event or a bad event. It really does trigger memory. And music will always be very personal. My wife and I agreed a long time ago that I will not play my music in the car. And
Louise, do not watch this video.
The funny thing is, I got her into a folk duo called Mundy Turner, Kath Mundy and Jay Turner, and we used to follow them around Yorkshire. They now live in Brisbane, and they're close friends of ours. And we used to go together to see them play. In fact, it used to be a family event. Us and two of our daughters would go and see them play. But that's the only time, really, she's ever really got into my music. We'll both listen to Pink in the car because I admire her incredibly as a singer. If you listen to a lot of her music, it's not unusual for it basically to be drums and her providing all the melody with instruments doing fills. She doesn't use auto-tune. And if she has another singer involved, which she often does, she's the one who generally switches straight into harmonies. She's a very, very clever and versatile singer. So when we're in the car, it's not unusual for us to put on a load of Pink just because I admire her. I think she's stunning. Again, I may not like everything she does, but she is very, very clever at it.
And I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up, because at the end of the day, you've just explained how you listen to music. You've explained what it is you like the styles that you like. You've also given us insight that just because you don't like it doesn't mean that you can't listen to it, and that you can actually, be objective, as I say, and you can give points about why you don't like it. But also that you like Pink. I actually like Pink as well. I think she's a rock star, man, at the end of the day, isn't she? She's kind of like got the pop coat on at times, but at the end of the day, she's a rock star. Couple of quick fire questions, which I haven't done before, but we should do. I'm a big fan of Carnival. Do you know Carnival from Australia?
Yes, I do. Yeah, Carnival with a K.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you like them?
Yes, very clever band. Reviewed some of their stuff historically, so yeah, I know who they are.
Good. Okay, and so another one: 3 top bands that you reckon our people should go and listen to full albums. Just very quickly, band and the album you reckon they should go listen to.
Well, I think we need to start off with, for me, the band whose shirt you're wearing, which I think is one of the most exciting bands to come out in New Zealand in recent years.
Agreed.
Outside In, their debut album, Karma Train, is currently on the long list for the Tate Awards, and quite rightly so.
Really?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Another band who's on that list, and I can't remember the name of the album, but Looking for Alaska. They are basically a duo. They're more in the folk genre. They both sing. But Amy's voice, to be honest, she is one of the most incredible belters I have ever heard in my life.
Awesome.
Absolutely amazing. And for something that most of your students will never have heard of, and you probably haven't heard of either, always in my top 5 albums when I'm asked will be Spock's Beard and the album Snow. Spock's Beard were a band that came out of America in the 90s. They're still going. Snow is a double CD concept album, and to me, it typifies what proper progressive rock is all about, but with shorter songs, but it's a concept double CD. But honestly, listen to that and you'll get to understand what progressive rock is all about.
Perfect. Well, look, guys, you just got experience and knowledge from somebody with a lot of experience and knowledge. So take it, soak it in, go and have a listen to those albums. If you have any questions, you can always talk to me in class. We have comments turned off in the video. But other than that, Kev, thank you so much for being on our show, and I look forward to catching up with you in person again sometime soon.